I don't know which one of these you want to use, but we have been just doing some really cool things with our people. Oh, you can go ahead and sit down. Sorry. We're just waiting for instructions. We've been doing some really cool things with all of our folks here, and just having both men and women kind of speak a little bit about what has kind of been on their hearts and what the Lord's been sharing with them, because we definitely believe in body ministry. You know, it's just not one guy standing up here doing this thing or whatever. And so definitely believe in body ministry. So we've had Eric and Heather and Marge and Joel and some of those. And we're going to have some more folks also doing that. And some folks I've known for 20 years or more. And Daniel and Diana, we've gotten to know just within the last little over a year now and all, and have found them to be just outstanding people and really love the Lord. And that's why I wanted Daniel to come up and just to share just kind of, you know, what the Lord has laid on his heart and kind of what the Lord's been teaching him. You know, him and I have lots of different conversations through text and also on the phone and you know, here and there. And I find him very much a man after God's heart. And so, Daniel, come on up. Yay! You want this one? You want that one? I
can take this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that good?
It's weird to have a microphone.
I know, but you have to so that we can get it.
Oh, is that what the reason is? Okay. I just want to make sure. Yeah. Yeah, so first and foremost, thank you everybody that came out. I have some friends. My wife had ended up, I guess, reaching out to a couple of friends of mine to come out and support. And then this morning, I found out that my parents flew in this morning. You know, she had arranged everything, and apparently everybody knew but me. So if you guys were in on it, I appreciate the, you know, just keeping it quiet. But I don't think I've, you know, I don't think I've cried like as much as I did this morning, and just, I was just touched, you know, the fact that I think the times and the seasons that we go through, you know, they're not always easy. And so, you know, recently I've gone through kind of my looking for my identity and just trying to find out who I am, and just some of the things my mom and I were talking about it this morning. But what was interesting about it, I'm a little more nervous now because I just had a good friend show up as well, and people that support me, and my parents are in town. So really what I wanted to talk about is really for me just kind of how I came to know Jesus. So big thing is for me is that I actually yo-yoed with my faith. I was kind of one foot in, 1 foot out. And so I was that drive-by. I needed the drive-by prayer where it was like when things were going bad, I would say, hey, just take me out of this, and I promise I'll go to church. And I think we've all been there, right? So I would kind of yo-yo between my faith, and it was only in times when times got bad. And so my mom, who has been a woman of faith for quite a while, and one of the biggest things for her was, you know, she never stopped praying. And so it was something that I'm learning now as God continues to join me and to kind of walk with me. But the big thing was I remember, so I was going through my faith, kind of yo-yoing in and out, and then I finally hit a point. So at the age of 30, I decided to, I usually do every year, I do a New Year's resolution, and I do something, it could be eccentric, could be, sometimes people question it, but one of the things that I did starting at 30 years old, I actually gave up drinking for an entire 12 months. So people would ask, they'd be like, what's the reason? Some people would ask, are you an alcoholic? There was just so many questions that came along with that. It was a stigma of stopping something that is socially accepted, socially encouraged. And so I did that for every other year I would do it, and sometimes there were years where I would even, during that, an off year, I would say, as I would go ahead and I'd say like, oh, I'm only gonna do it for 6 months this time, you know? And so when in 2019, we ended up moving to San Diego in August of 2019, and I met some people down there in San Diego, and 2020 was going to be one of the years that it fell on that time where I was going to stop drinking. So I stopped drinking in 2020, January 1st. It was done. This was kind of a regular routine kind of thing. And so much happened. I think we can all remember so much happened in that year. You know, some people say like, not only did you survive 2020 because of COVID, but they were like, you survived it sober. So, you know, so they were like, you were at home the entire time and you could have been. And so one of the things, a couple of things that happened that year was, as I was leading up to 2020, I started to get more into my Bible. I started to read it more. I started to ask more questions. I started to pray more. I started to pray publicly on our porch in San Diego. And so 2020 comes around. I have one of my coworkers, his wife is pregnant. And so I remember his wife was pregnant and she ended up having a seizure. And so what happened was that they had to deliver the baby early, really, really early. And so I had kind of checked in with him constantly. I was always checking in and saying, hey, how's your wife? How's everything going with the pregnancy? So on and so forth. So we kind of got to know we got to know each other a little bit better. And so I had only known him a couple of months, right? And so what was interesting about the development of that relationship was just the fact that kind of just going and speaking to him, there was something about him that it was just going and kind of checking in with him and seeing how he was doing, how the pregnancy was progressing. So his wife has a seizure. They ended up having to deliver the baby early. It's a preemie baby. The doctors were going to do everything they could to save this child's life. And so what ended up happening, the baby ended up having to go on to life support. It was on life support probably for a couple of weeks. And so I remember that it was probably in the summer. We had a relative over, and it was the off year that I was like, I'm not going to, you know. And so for whatever reason, there was a craving. It's probably one of the strongest cravings that I was like, oh yes, I can go buy, I don't have to go to work tomorrow. I can go buy a beer and we can have a good time and everything like that. And so I remember that I was like, well, I'm gonna cook dinner first. I'm gonna help cook dinner, and then after that I'll go. We sat down for dinner, and next thing you know, it was just kind of like, I'm gonna go in a little bit. Well, after dinner, I ended up getting a phone call. And so it was my friend, and he said, hey, listen, he said, I need to ask for a huge favor. And I was like, okay, anything, At this point, I had asked him numerous times if there was anything that I could do, any food that I can send, anything that if I could stay with him at the hospital or anything like that. He was like, we're good, we're dealing with it. So I said, okay. So he called me, and I was just really surprised to hear from him. And so he said, hey, listen, can you meet me at the hospital? And I said, 100%, yes, I can. I will be there. Give me about 5 minutes, and I'm on my way. So I went ahead. I jumped in the car. I went to the hospital. And at this time, if you ever went to the doctor's office or the hospital, that time it was like, take your temperature, go in, wear a mask, do all the protocols. And so he didn't tell me. I didn't even ask any questions. I was just like, you want my help? I'm there. And so I remember that I go in there and he says, hey, listen, he said, the reason why I called you is because I couldn't call anybody else. There's nobody in the time frame that they knew me, and I've been working with some of the people for over a year now, some of them even 2. He's like, there's nobody that I wanted to call because nobody else has checked in on me. Nobody else has reached out. Nobody has shown compassion like you have, so I called you. And he's like, and the reason why I called you was because I want you to see if you can stay with my daughter because the doctors can't do anything for my son. And so we have to go ahead, and we've made the decision, my wife and I, to go ahead and pull the plug, you know. And so I think at that moment I stayed with his daughter, and I stayed with his daughter. I didn't know how to explain it to her. I didn't even know if she knew why she was there. But we had a conversation, and I remember his wife coming in, and at this point I'm kind of still in my process of just, I'm a baby Christian, right? And so I go and I said to, you know, he walks in. I don't think that we said a word to each other. I saw a man that had just had to pull the plug on his son. And the broken-hearted that, I mean, he was devastated. I grabbed him, I hugged him, and I cried with him. And I can tell you right now that as a man, that is probably one of the most, you know, it's not easy to do as a man. But I hugged him for what felt like forever. And I just held him, and I told him everything was going to be okay, and I said that this is going to be, this is hard, and I understand, and I'm here if you need me, I'm here. Whatever it is that I can do, and after we went ahead, he just said thank you. He was all like, thank you for always being there. Thank you for checking in on me. Thank you for, being there for my family. And so I remember driving back on my way home, and this was a little bit later. And so the streets were empty. I mean, it was just a desolate place. It was already COVID, so at this point, everything was a ghost town. There was no traffic. And so I went, and I just remember vividly driving probably slower than I would usually drive, and just thinking on the way home. And I said, you know what? I was like, had I just gone to the liquor store 5 minutes earlier, had I went ahead and fed into that craving and given into that craving. And one of the biggest things and the mistakes that I've made, and thankfully I have made the decision to drink and drive in my younger years. And thankfully there was a lot of prayer there, because there was definitely a lot of prayer there. But it was one of those things that I think I had grown out of that, and I said, you know what, if I'm ever going to drink, I'm not going to drive. And so that was my one rule, is that if I ever had a beer, I was not going to get behind the wheel. So that's why it was so significant to me when I go and I said, had I just taken 5 more minutes, had I gone earlier, had I stopped, had I done something, but there was such a peace surrounding me that I was just like, I don't know if I would have been able to be there in a time of need, in a time where you feel like the world has stopped, and a time that you feel that the world is there. Because I know that's what he was thinking. He was just like, the world is unfair, and I go and I think to myself, I'm like, I didn't have an answer for him at the moment. And so I'm driving back and I'm thinking about all of this, and it's just replaying in my head, but there was this sense of peace where I was just like, you know what? I don't know what would have happened. I don't know where he would have been, what he would have had to do, but I ended up getting home, and I think at that point I was going and I was making the decision to go ahead and get baptized. And one of the biggest things for me was I wanted to get baptized in the Pacific Ocean. I was like, we might as well take advantage. We got the beach right here. Let's just do it, right? And so the funny thing about it is that I started out with my mom being a woman of faith. And the funny thing is that I think I was going to church since I was probably, 10, when I was really kind of going. And my mom, it was that Sunday morning, get up in the morning, let's go to church. I don't care who's going, but you're going. All right, so get in the car, get ready. So, and then at 17, 18 years old, when I felt like I was an adult and I could make adult decisions, I thought I was an adult, I went ahead and I kind of, that's where I let that go. So when I made the decision to get baptized, it's interesting how God works and comes full circle, because I was at the location where my mom and my family and my parents could drive down to San Diego and kind of watch this. And I remember we were on the beach, and my mom said to me, God has finally answered my prayers. God, I have been so faithful. I have been praying so long. I have been praying for you to develop this relationship with him because it's so incredibly awesome. And she's all like, I got to see it through. Gosh, so many more years later. We're talking over 20 years later. She got to see it, and she knew at that moment when I was baptized, and we're still waiting on 5 more of my siblings to get saved. She hasn't stopped praying. She hasn't stopped praying yet. But she's like, 1 out of 5, that's pretty good. I'll take those odds right now, I think we're at 1.5. We're getting there. So that was the thing. And so the biggest thing for me, when I made the decision later, 2021 rolls around, and Diana's like, okay, what are we doing this year? What's going to be the challenge this year? And I said, you know what? I said, I think I'm going to go another year without drinking. And she was all like, that's something new, something different. And so I said to myself, I was like, I'm going to stop drinking. And then it turned into 3 years, and this is going to be my 4th year that I've actually stopped. And so it's not, for me, one of the things that I want to be reminded of is the fact that I don't ever want to feel, I want to be clear-headed and clear-headed, clear-minded, but I want to be there for the people that call in the middle of the night. I want to be the one that picks up the phone. I want to be the one that, I think that's where God has me. God has me as, whenever we go and as believers, we sometimes lose that faith and we lose that hope that nobody else is going to pick up. Nobody else is going to listen to me. Nobody else is going to be there in that time of need. And I want to be there. I want to pick up the phone. I want to be there to console them in their troubles. I want to be there to listen. And throughout the years, as I've seen, my prayers have gotten longer. My faith has gotten stronger. And so I think now, and this morning when my mom walked into I've been going through my season, but my mom walked into the kitchen this morning. I cried because it took me back to a place that said, you know what, because I'll be honest with you, these last couple of weeks have been challenging because I'm like, a faith tested is definitely definitely happens as a believer. And I think sometimes when we get baptized, we really go and we say, you know what? It's going to be all sunshines and rainbows now. That's it. I'm in the fast lane. You know, it's easy. I accepted Jesus as my Savior. Boom. Well, that's it. It's passing go, collect $200 every time. And so this season, when I went and I saw her this morning, it reminded me that I just got to be patient, just like she was. Over 20 years and praying faithfully and not just staying on course. And she's gotten a chance to see it through. So I really, really like I said, I don't know where God has me now. I don't feel like I have to know. And I think sometimes when our faith is tested, it's okay to kind of just take a second to reflect. And that's the biggest thing that I wanted to share with you guys, is that everybody here as well has been praying for me. And I'm so thankful to know that I have kind of that spiritual net. It doesn't make me want to go back to do anything, go back to that person that I was before. So again, I know that we get tested. I know that we get challenged daily. But the fact that not only do we have each other, but we can, pick up the phone metaphorically, right, and just pray. And he's going to answer. And one of the things that I'm finding out right now is that he's not going to answer in the way that we want him to answer, but we definitely, he'll answer. And again, my mom's a testament to that. So I just appreciate everybody here. Thank you guys. So that's all I got. That's it.
That's good, man. That's good. Yeah. That's good. Yes, the power of praying parents. That is for sure. That's a great testimony. It's wonderful. Great. Everybody stand again. Let's worship some more. Amen.